In August 2024, a British tech billionaire drowned when his superyacht sank off the coast of Sicily. Mike Lynch had just walked free from a criminal trial in the United States, a trial that could have sent him to prison for 25 years. He'd been accused of one of the most audacious corporate frauds in history. ALLEGEDL. Why cooking the books at his software company to trick Hewlett-Packard into paying $11 billion for a business that wasn't worth a fraction of that amount. Within 12 months of the deal closing, HP discovered what they claimed were massive accounting frauds. They wrote off $8.8 billion, one of the largest corporate write-downs ever recorded. But Mike Lynch never admitted guilt. He fought extradition for years, stood trial in San Francisco, and won. Then, just weeks after his acquittal, he died in that mysterious yacht accident, while HP was still pursuing $4 billion in civil damages against his estate. Did Mike Lynch pull off one of history's greatest corporate cons and get away with it? Or was he an innocent entrepreneur caught in the crossfire of corporate incompetence? Today, you're going to learn exactly how this $11 billion disaster unfolded and the fraud techniques that allegedly made it possible. If you enjoy uncovering the financial stories that most people slept through, please hit that like button and subscribe to The Sleeping Economist. And turn on notifications, because we're digging up stories that deserve to be told. Chapter 1. The Wizard of Cambridge. Mike Lynch didn't look like a fraudster. He looked like exactly what he was supposed to be. A brilliant computer scientist turned entrepreneur who'd built one of Britain's most successful tech companies from scratch. Born in 1965 near London, Lynch earned his PhD in mathematical computing from Cambridge University. While still in his 20s, he founded a company called Autonomy in 1996. The timing was perfect, right at the dawn of the internet age, when businesses were drowning in digital data and had no idea how to manage it. Autonomy's software promised something revolutionary. It used pattern recognition and probability theory, what we'd now call early artificial intelligence, to automatically sort through massive amounts of unstructured data. Emails, documents, audio files, videos. Autonomy could analyze it all without humans having to manually tag and organize everything. Think of it this way. Imagine you're a lawyer with 10 million documents to review for a case. Autonomy's software could read through all of them, understand the context, find patterns, and pull out exactly what you needed automatically. In the early 2000s, this was cutting-edge technology, and the market believed in it. Autonomy went public on the European stock markets in 1998, then on the Nasdaq in 2000. By 2010, the company was valued at over £5 billion. Mike Lynch became one of Britain's most celebrated tech entrepreneurs, compared to Steve Jobs and Bill Gates in the British press. He advised the UK government on technology policy. He was awarded an OBE by the Queen. But while Autonomy was reporting spectacular growth revenue climbing year after year, profit margins that made competitors jealous, something else was happening behind the scenes. According to later allegations from prosecutors and HP, Autonomy wasn't actually growing as fast as the numbers suggested. The alleged fraud was sophisticated. Unlike simple accounting frauds, where someone just invents fake revenue, Autonomy allegedly used multiple techniques that made the numbers look legitimate on the surface. Channel stuffing, vendor financing arrangements, selling low-margin hardware, but recording it as high-margin software sales, and backdating contracts to shift revenue between quarters. Mike Lynch would later claim he knew nothing about any of this, that if fraud occurred, it was done by subordinates without his knowledge. But prosecutors would argue that he was the mastermind who orchestrated the entire scheme to inflate Autonomy's value for one specific purpose: to sell the company for the maximum possible price. And he found the perfect buyer: Hewlett-Packard, one of the most iconic names in American business, a company that was about to make what many consider the worst acquisition decision in corporate history. Chapter 2. HP's Desperate Gamble. To understand how HP got fooled out of $11 billion, You need to understand how desperate they were in 2010 and 2011. Hewlett-Packard HE was a legendary Silicon Valley company founded in a garage in 1939 by Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. For decades, they were an engineering powerhouse: calculators, computers, printers. But by 2010, HP was struggling with an identity crisis. The PC market was commoditizing, meaning profit margins were shrinking because everyone was competing on price. HP's printer business, once a cash cow, was threatened by the shift to digital documents. Meanwhile, competitors like IBM were pivoting to high-margin enterprise software and services, the kind of business where you didn't manufacture physical products. You licensed software and charged recurring fees. Much better margins, much more predictable revenue. HP's CEO at the time was Leo Apotheker, a former SAP executive who'd been hired specifically to transform HP from a hardware company into a software and services company. Apotheker had been on the job less than a year, and he was under intense pressure to make a big strategic move. Enter Autonomy. Mike Lynch's company seemed like the perfect acquisition target. It had impressive reported revenue growth, high profit margins allegedly around 40%, which is exceptional for software and cutting-edge technology that could help HP compete with IBM in enterprise software. But HP didn't do typical acquisition due diligence. They were in a hurry. Later investigations revealed that HP spent only 8 weeks reviewing Autonomy's finances before announcing the deal, a shockingly short period for an $11 billion transaction. And they paid a massive premium. Autonomy's market value before the deal was announced was around $6 billion. HP offered $11.1 billion and 80% premium. Industry analysts were stunned. Even on the day of the announcement in August 2011, HP's stock dropped nearly 20% because investors thought the company was overpaying for Autonomy. Mike Lynch, meanwhile, stood to make hundreds of millions personally from the sale. He owned about 8% of Autonomy, which meant he'd pocket around $800 million when the deal closed. But here's what HP didn't know. According to later allegations, they were looking at financial statements that had been systematically manipulated for years. The revenue wasn't what it appeared to be. The profit margins were inflated. The growth trajectory was fabricated. HP's board approved the acquisition in August 2011. The deal closed in October. Mike Lynch became an HP employee running the Autonomy division. And for a few months, everything seemed fine. Then HP's finance team started looking more closely at the numbers. And what they found would trigger one of the biggest corporate fraud investigations in history. Chapter 3. The House of Cards collapses. The first cracks appeared in spring 2012, just 6 months after HP completed the acquisition. HP's accountants noticed something strange in Autonomy's financial records. The revenue mix didn't match what they'd been told. Autonomy was supposed to be a pure software company with high margins. But when HP dug into the details, they found millions of dollars in low-margin hardware sales, things like computer servers and storage equipment being recorded as software revenue. Why does that matter? Because of how investors value companies. Software companies typically trade much higher valuations than hardware companies because software has better profit margins. If you sell a software license for $1 million, your cost might only be $100,000, a 90% margin. But if you sell hardware for $1 million, your cost might be $800,000 only, a 20% margin. According to HP's later allegations, Autonomy had been buying hardware from third-party suppliers, then reselling it to customers as part of bundled solutions, but recording almost all the revenue as software sales. This made Autonomy's margins look much higher than they actually were. Then HP discovered what they alleged was channel stuffing. This is when a company pressures distributors and resellers to buy more product than they can actually sell to end customers, artificially inflating short-term revenue. Autonomy allegedly offered special financing deals and side agreements that allowed resellers to return unsold products later, but Autonomy recorded the revenue immediately as if the sales were final. HP also found alleged round-tripping transactions. Autonomy would sell software to a third-party company. Then that company would turn around and use the money to buy services from Autonomy. The net effect was close to zero, but Autonomy got to record both transactions as revenue. And perhaps most damaging, HP found evidence of what they alleged were backdated contracts. When a deal didn't close before the end of a financial quarter, Autonomy allegedly changed the contract dates to make it look like the revenue belonged to the earlier quarter, boosting reported growth. In May 2012, just 7 months after the acquisition closed, HP fired Autonomy's chief financial officer, Sicily Hussain. In internal communications, HP executives were increasingly alarmed. They brought in forensic accountants. They contacted the FBI and the UK Serious Fraud Office. On November 20, 2012, HP made a shocking announcement. They were writing down the value of Autonomy by $8.8 billion. CEO Meg Whitman, who had replaced Leo Apotheker, said publicly that HP had discovered serious accounting improprieties and outright misrepresentations at Autonomy. The alleged fraud totaled about $5 billion. HP claimed the difference between what Autonomy was actually worth and what HP had paid. Mike Lynch's response? He denied everything. He claimed HP was scapegoating him to cover up their own mismanagement of the acquisition. The legal battle was just beginning. Chapter 4. The 13-year legal war. What followed was one of the longest and most expensive corporate fraud cases in history. A 13-year legal war fought across 2 continents and 3 different court systems. HP immediately sued Mike Lynch and Sicily Hussain in both U.S. criminal court and U.K. civil court, seeking billions in damages. The U.S. Department of Justice filed criminal charges. The U.K. Serious Fraud Office opened its own investigation. Mike Lynch fought back aggressively. He hired some of the most expensive lawyers in the world. He launched a public relations campaign, giving interviews claiming he was innocent and that HP had bungled the acquisition through their own incompetence, not because of any fraud. And he had some valid points. HP's due diligence before the acquisition had been rushed and superficial. HP had fired Lynch within months of the deal closing, which made it harder for them to argue he'd concealed problems. And HP's own management had made several disastrous strategic decisions after the acquisition that contributed to Autonomy's poor performance. But prosecutors had evidence. They had emails showing Lynch and Hussain discussing the hardware sales and how to record them. They had testimony from former Autonomy employees who said they'd been pressured to meet unrealistic targets. They had forensic accounting reports showing systematic manipulation of financial statements. In 2018, Sicily Hussain, Autonomy's former CFO, was convicted in the United States of 16 counts of fraud and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. That conviction was a major blow to Lynch, because prosecutors argued that Hussain couldn't have executed such a complex fraud without Lynch's knowledge and approval. HP also won their UK civil case. In 2022, a British judge ruled that Lynch and Hussain had fraudulently inflated Autonomy's value and that HP had been deceived. The judge awarded HP $4 billion in damages, though calculating the exact amount was postponed, pending further proceedings. Meanwhile, the United States was trying to extradite Mike Lynch to face criminal charges in San Francisco. Lynch fought extradition for years, arguing that he should be tried in the UK, not the US. But in 2023, he lost that battle. He was extradited to California and placed under house arrest with a GPS ankle monitor, forbidden from leaving the San Francisco area. His criminal trial began in March 2024. Prosecutors claimed he'd orchestrated a massive fraud. Lynch's defense argued he'd been a visionary entrepreneur focused on technology, not financial details, and that if accounting fraud occurred, it was done by subordinates without his knowledge. The trial lasted 3 months. In June 2024, the jury delivered their verdict. Not guilty on all counts. Mike Lynch was free. He'd beaten the criminal charges. He flew back to the UK to celebrate with family and friends. Then, 6 weeks later, he died. Chapter 5. The Mysterious Ending. On August 19, 2024, Mike Lynch was aboard his 180-foot superyacht, the Basian, anchored off the coast of Sicily. He was celebrating his legal victory with family, friends, and some of the lawyers who defended him in the U.S. trial. Just before dawn, a sudden and violent storm, what meteorologists call a waterspout, basically a tornado over water, struck the yacht. The Basian sank in minutes. 15 people were rescued. 7 people died, including Mike Lynch and his 18-year-old daughter Hannah. Also killed, Lynch's lawyer Chris Morvillo, who'd led his defense team, and Jonathan Bloomer, chairman of Morgan Stanley International, who testified as a character witness for Lynch at trial. The timing seemed almost too suspicious to be coincidence. Lynch had just been acquitted of criminal fraud charges, but HP was still pursuing $4 billion in civil damages against him in the UK courts. With Lynch dead, that civil case became significantly more complicated, and the damages, if awarded, would now come from his estate rather than from Lynch personally. Even stranger, just 2 days before the yacht sinking, Lynch's former co-defendant and Autonomy vice president, Stephen Chamberlain, was killed in a hit-and-run accident while jogging in England. 2 key figures in the Autonomy case, dead within 48 hours of each other. Conspiracy theories immediately flooded social media. Was this really a coincidence? Or had someone wanted to silence Lynch and his associates before they could fully clear their names or reveal more about what happened at Autonomy? Italian authorities investigated the yacht sinking. Their conclusion: tragic accident. The yacht's captain had failed to properly secure the vessel before the storm hit, and the waterspout was a rare but natural weather event. The hit-and-run that killed Stephen Chamberlain was also ruled accidental. A 49-year-old driver simply didn't see him on the road. But questions lingered. Mike Lynch had spent 13 years fighting fraud allegations, spent tens of millions on legal fees, faced the possibility of dying in prison. And then, just weeks after his acquittal, he was dead. HP's reaction was notably muted. They issued a brief statement expressing condolences, but made it clear they would continue pursuing their civil case against Lynch's estate. As of late 2024, that case is still pending in British courts. Lynch's family and supporters maintain his innocence. They argue that HP scapegoated a brilliant entrepreneur to cover up their own due diligence failures and post-acquisition mismanagement. HP and prosecutors argue the evidence of fraud was overwhelming and that Lynch escaped criminal conviction through excellent legal defense, not because he was innocent. The truth may never be fully known. Mike Lynch took his version of the story to his grave. But we can learn critical lessons from this $11 billion disaster lessons that apply, whether you're a corporate executive, an investor, or just someone trying to understand how massive frauds happen. Chapter 6. The Lessons We Can't Ignore. The HP-Autonomy scandal teaches us 6 critical lessons about corporate fraud, due diligence, and accountability. Lesson 1. Desperation breeds bad decisions. HP was desperate to transform from a hardware company to a software company. That desperation made them rush their due diligence, ignore red flags, and massively overpay for autonomy. When you're under pressure to make a big strategic move, that's exactly when you need to slow down and be more careful, not less. Lesson 2. Premium prices create fraud incentives. HP offered an 80% premium over Autonomy's market value, paying $11 billion for a company worth about $6 billion. That created an enormous incentive for sellers to manipulate their financials to justify the price. Anytime you see massive acquisition premiums, ask yourself, what pressures might this create to inflate the target company's value? Lesson 3. Software versus hardware revenue matters enormously. One of Autonomy's alleged fraud techniques was selling hardware but recording it as software revenue. This seems like a technical accounting detail, but it's actually crucial. Software companies get valued much higher than hardware companies. If you're investing in a software company, make sure you understand exactly where their revenue is really coming from. Lesson 4. Channel stuffing is a classic warning sign. When a company is stuffing its distribution channels with inventory that hasn't actually been sold to end customers, or offering special financing deals and return agreements that make sales reversible, that's a major red flag. Real, sustainable revenue comes from end customers who actually use the product. Lesson 5. Due diligence matters more than ever in tech acquisitions. HP spent only 8 weeks reviewing an $11 billion acquisition. That's insane. Complex software companies require months of careful financial, technical, and legal review. Lesson 6. Legal outcomes don't always equal truth. Mike Lynch was acquitted in criminal court, which means prosecutors couldn't prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But he lost in UK civil court, where the standard of proof is lower. Does his criminal acquittal mean he was innocent? Does his civil loss mean he was guilty? The reality is that legal outcomes are determined by evidence standards, jury decisions, and quality of legal representation, not by some objective measure of truth. For all of us, the HP-Autonomy case is a reminder that even the smartest people and biggest companies can get fooled when financial incentives are strong. Enough and oversight is weak enough. And the question that still haunts this case: was Mike Lynch a criminal mastermind who got away with it, or a scapegoat who became the victim of corporate blame shifting? We may never know for sure. If stories like this, where we uncover the economic events that shaped our world while most people weren't paying attention, fascinate you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because we're just getting started with these financial educational mysteries.